Good afternoon, everybody. It's KC3QPJ. We're the day after Thanksgiving. Not sure the date. I guess it would be the 25th or 26th. It's 2:05 p.m. in the afternoon on Friday, and wanted to do a good update video for all my subscribers, and just to keep you updated on my journey in the hobby of ham radio. And I'm very, very excited to announce that I finally did study and get my general class license. And boy, let me tell you, it was not easy. The older I've gotten, and let me move some stuff around here. The harder it has been for me to learn and retain things. But I will say that even if I can do it, probably a caveman can do it, because I've never been the brightest person in the world with electronics, and the general ticket has a little bit to do more with electronics, resistances, capacitance, antennas, all that. So I don't want to throw too much on you guys if you're not a general holder, other than if you study, watch some videos that you can understand a lot of what they're teaching, you're going to do a good job. So I've got some updates to my ham shack here, and I'm going to share all this with you now. I did start out in the HF bands, anywhere from what they consider 80 meters up to 10 meters. So that's, let's see here, let's look at my chart. Anywhere from 3.5 megahertz up to 29.9 megahertz, I think, is where the 10 meter ends. 29.7 megahertz. Now you think, oh, well, that's not a lot of bandwidth. That's a lot of bandwidth. That's a lot of privileges. Now, mind you, I'm limited to certain parts of each band just right now, because I don't know CW Morse code, and there are limitations with the general license that don't allow you to transmit on some of those bands because they're designated for amateur extra, which is, fine with me, because upgrading from technician to general has just opened a whole new can of worms in itself, just in the voice modes already. So I'm excited to say that I'm up and running. I'm going to show you my new rig here and the new power supply, and I had to upgrade my power supply, and I'm going to tell you which one I got and what I think of it so far. And the reason I upgraded is my original power supply was only a 23 amp switching power supply. I have upgraded to a 50 amp switching power supply. Now, as a 50 amp switching power supply, that is its peak rated power for your amperage output, which your amps is very important when you're going into HF radio. However, it does show in the specs that it is a 40 amp continuous. And there's a lot of controversy whether you should get a linear power supply or a switching power supply. I'm going to tell you what I found the differences are and give you my opinion. It's not fact, but I'm going to give you my opinion on why I don't feel like linear power supplies are no longer necessary, but they are good to have as a backup. So with that said, let's get to the first step here. And mind you, this is not going to be obviously crystal clear, because my lighting, my cameras, they're both still cheap. But let's get over to my power supply real quick. So here's the power supply. It is a Tech Power TP50WS. Right now I have this showing my amp draw, which is a little bit over an amp. With the angle of the camera, it's probably showing under an amp, but I would say it's a little over an amp. So I'm showing my amp draw because I was using my HF radio in 100 watts. And at 100 watts peak power, it's drawing about 18 amps, which really would have overloaded my old 23 amp power supply, because its rating was at 23. So it definitely would have heated up that old power supply, and why I upgraded. So also, you could see you have adjustable voltage here, and when you turn it to the voltage setting, it shows what your output voltage is. And I will say at 100 watts that this has not faltered from the delivering the solid 13.8, which I have tested. So at 100 watts, it didn't matter what band I was using on my HF radio, that never faltered. The capacitors and the power supply itself for this brand has been really, really good. I'm very happy with this power supply, and it was really a nice buy on Amazon. And I just decided to take a chance on it, pulled the trigger. Right now on Amazon, I believe it's $160 for this power supply, and linear power supplies would be double that, at least double that, for the amount of power that I'm able to generate with this power supply. Now, you're going to notice a lot of people, say you have to have linear. The biggest argument, there were two big arguments for that. Switching power supplies will generate RF interference because of the amount of parts and everything that are in them. Also, switching power supplies probably aren't very reliable. Well, we're going to test that over the next couple years. And that's why I went kind of overkill, because I wanted to have way more power than I needed, and I wanted to make sure that I'm not stressing it, but I keep it on. And the worst thing you could do for any kind of electronics that has any kind of capacitors or anything that stores power in it, even with your radios, is to store it away and not use it. It creates oxidation. It creates issues for the electrolytic capacitors that are inside these units. Them not being used, basically, it's a slow death for whatever it is. So the more you use it, the more consistent you are, and using it in a way that does not abuse it, you'll get the longevity that you need for what you pay for. Now, as far as longevity, nothing can beat a linear power supply. They're cheap, easy, and they're very cheap to fix and very easy to fix. But the initial cost of them is phenomenal. They're astronomical. So if I'm telling you all this, why did I still go with the switching? I'm going to tell you why I went with the switching. Well, two reasons. One was cost. Two, I did some research about the RF interference, and they've come up with this little way to filter that interference. If you're having interference, and don't mind my fingernail, I know it's gross, but I smashed that finger quite a few years ago. If you're getting any RF interference from your power supply on any of the bands that you're transmitting on, this knob right here, you see it says noise offset. It will allow you to turn it, to tune it out of whatever bandwidth you're on. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I have not had to use this at all for any reason. I really feel like a lot of times when you're getting RF interference with a switching power supply, and if you'll notice in a lot of videos that I've seen from other operators, they've got their power supplies dead smack on top of their radio or right down below it. They even have racks that allow you to slide a power supply directly underneath of the radio. You think maybe that might be part of the reason? Well, I'm going to tell you what, I would say that's probably maybe a quarter of the reason why they are getting the interference from their power supplies. So the other thing is with these switching power supplies is, like I told you before, they're a lot less expensive. So why linear over this? I really don't know, because the biggest main reason I went with a switching supply over a linear was because the switching power supplies are 80 to 85% efficient. You're thinking, well, why aren't they 100% efficient? Well, nothing electronic ever is going to be 100% efficient. It's impossible. You're going to get loss everywhere just in the energy that it takes to accomplish what you're doing. That's even with car stereo, home theater. You're never going to be 100% efficient. They're getting pretty close to over 90% with a lot of Class C and a lot of Class D digital type of electronics for car audio and home audio. But in the ham radio world, 80 to 85% efficient is pretty daggone efficient. So linear power supplies, let me put it to you like this. They are generally 60% efficient or lower on average. Okay, that's average. 60% efficiency. Well, that's going to give you a high electric bill if you're running lots of power. I'm going to sit and take my 50 amp power supply here, and I'm going to let this run 24 hours a day. I'm never going to turn this off unless I have a thunderstorm coming. That's the only time this power supply is going to be turned off. Now, let me show you what I'm powering with this, but I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to show you the adjustments I've made to my ham shack here. So the new HF radio, well, it's not new, but it's new to me. So let's go ahead and scoot on over here. And here she blows. And right now, let's turn this up a little bit. There's a gentleman in New York doing QRP. QRP is low power broad transmissions, 20 watts or less. Okay, so where is this guy now? I only know because I just talked to him. And I want to give a shout out to him, but I don't want to put his information on my YouTube channel just because I never asked him if it was okay. So, that little bit of recording won't matter. He's in upstate New York, okay? He's in upstate New York running with a radio that can only put out peak power 20 watts. So I talked to him on about 50 watts. I turned my power down because I didn't want to run this radio. So let me tell you about my radio, and this is why HF is so cool. Right now outside I have a horizontally polarized, quite literally, meaning I have an antenna that's 70 foot long, that is 15 feet off the ground, and it's horizontal. It's not vertical, okay? It's a loner right now until I get my new antenna. But that antenna right there is all I needed to get up on the air for these frequencies. So, here's the other cool thing about this hobby. Kenwood, they're one of the leaders in ham radio, along with ICOM and Yaesu. Why did I buy this radio? Well, it's old, but this radio, brand new when it was marketed, was over $1,200. But as you can see, this radio is in excellent condition. It's probably 12 to 13 years old, but there was not a scratch on this. It does have some dust from being stored away, and I will clean that up eventually. But it has everything you need as a beginner, and that's why I bought this radio, and I paid $500 for it. I feel like it was a good value. Now, I'm sure some of the veterans hams are like, oh, I can't believe you paid $500 for that radio. Well, I'll put it to you like this. It's still cheaper than a Yaesu 891, which is the one that I did want to buy. I wanted to buy that radio because it had a lot more bells and whistles, and it was a lot more compact than this Kenwood, probably about half the size, to be honest with you. But Kenwood receivers in themselves are top notch. They have some of the best receivers ever put in any radio on the market, hands down in my eyes. So, this is the newest edition. Now, this radio, I thought when I got it, I thought that it had covered 6 meters, and it doesn't, unfortunately. There's a difference in the model number. This is a TS570D. The TS570S covers 6 meters. So that would be a good tip in case you guys find a radio like this where it's in good condition and has been taken care of very well. You want the option of as many bands as you can, good working condition for the lowest cost. So I was unaware. I didn't have much time to look at the radio, but with the little bit of time that I did look at it, right off the top, I'm thinking to myself, man, this is an instant gem for the money. So this is a good starter radio, and some of these guys might be calling these dinosaurs, but I'm going to tell you right now, I've absolutely enjoyed this radio. Just in 3 days, I've had this radio up and running for 3 days. I have made contacts in 14 different states, not including my own, a couple contacts in my own, which is kind of hard right now because my antenna's not that far off the ground, so actually local communications are hindered more than the long distance propagation. The station I've contacted furthest out was in Oklahoma, and that was yesterday. Yesterday morning around 9:30, I spoke to a gentleman in Oklahoma, and it was just really neat to know that this radio can still get out that far. Okay, so that being said, guys, I did a lot of upgrades, and I'm going to give rhymes and reasons why I've done certain things, but I've also made sacrifices to make sure that I could afford all this. But here's my power supply and my HF radio, and we're going to zoom out here and show you the whole ham shack. So now I've got both of these radios. Let's see if we could do something a little bit different here with this camera, because it's starting to tick me off a little bit with the way it's configured here. Here we go. There we go. This might do a little bit better. Sorry about that if I made anybody dizzy. All right, so here we go. Here's the whole ham shack now, and please don't mind the lighting, guys. All right, so that radio, that's my TYT 9000D. That's for 220 megahertz. The sacrifice I made is I sold my ICOM ID 5100A. Why did I do that? Why in the world would you sell such a nice radio? A lot of people are going to ask that. Didn't use the D-Star. That's what made it nice. I mean, the touchscreen was nice, but I didn't use the D-Star. So believe it or not, I'm going to come and bring back my TYT 9000D, not 9000, my 7800 dual bander, because it was such an underrated radio for power. I'm going to put it back in place of what I have in here now, which right now I'm using an Alinco DR735T, 735 or 753. This is a monster to program by hand. So if you guys ever get an Alinco, you can get a data programming cable for it. I would recommend it, because this thing is like trying to find hidden Easter eggs in a video game, if any of y'all know my reference. It's like a Chinese puzzle box trying to figure out how to program it. I had to watch 6 videos to figure out how to just get my PL tones and all that fun jazz with getting everything in there. Oh, and as you notice, I have the original owner's manual for this Kenwood also, so that was another reason why I got it. Now, I don't know if you guys can see these 2 bars that I have running vertical right there with all the screws on them. Sorry, I'm doing this on the camera on the screen here. You got a red one here, and you got the black one there. Those are distribution blocks. Okay, power distribution blocks. Red for your positive, black for your negative. And I got those, and I got them rated for, they're 150 amp rated. Okay. I'll never have 150 amps coming out of that, ever. I would have to have 5 radios here on here, all keyed down at 50 watts each to get 150 amps out of those bars. And by that time, it would probably blow the fuse on the power supply before it would ever allow that much amperage to them. But I got the higher amperage rating to keep heat down. I don't want a lot of heat running through my wires, because when you are running and throwing power, you will generate heat. So the beefier it is, the better off you're going to be. And that's why I bought those distribution blocks. And the other reason was I don't want to use Anderson power poles. And I didn't want a ton of leads coming off the back of my power supply. So right now, all these radios are being operated off of the 2 distribution blocks. I got a main ground, main power, main ground, main power. Not trying to flip anybody off there. And then my radios that I have powered on there. The only radio that I have powered on the power supply is the Alinco, because that's a temporary setup. That's temporary, and that's my brother-in-law's. Now, I'm only using it temporary because it's not mine. It's my brother-in-law's radio, and I'm not going to stress that radio because it's his, and I want very little time on that radio, so it's still very new. However, I will say that radio, I'm not even going to bother doing a review on it, other than it is very nice for receive and transmit. Does have built-in mic gain. The sound on the speaker output's really good, but I still prefer an external speaker. It is getting into the local repeaters with ease. It's 5, 25, and 50 watts. I did put it on the meter, though. I was surprised on 2 meters. It was pushing closer to 60 watts. So pretty sweet radio. Really a big, giant pain in the tail end to try to program. But this is more to my journey into ham radio, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe, share, and this I feel has been a really big step in my journey to learning this hobby and being able to provide more information for you based on what I learned from people who have been in this in years. And there's so many opinions out there about how you should do each thing and why you should do this and why you shouldn't do that. I'm tell you what, I don't like being told, I like being shown. And when it came to the linear power supplies, everybody says, oh, well, you need to buy a linear, you need to buy a linear, you need to buy a linear. And I didn't. No, I'm not doing it. I think that they serve their purpose. I will say that, yes, they are way more reliable than a switching power supply ever will be. They will last until the dinosaurs roam the earth again. But I can't afford it. And I don't like paying a high energy bill. So the money I save on electricity, when this one dies, I'll just buy another cheaper one. And then I'm still under the amount of money that I paid for the first one for a linear. So just my opinions, guys. And for all the people that I was able to speak to this week, wherever you were, I don't want to throw out call signs because I don't want to violate anybody's privacy. But I appreciate the time that was spent as a new general and welcoming me into different groups that actually hang out on different parts of different bands, on the HF bands. Thank you so much. And I hope you guys continue your journey. Now, next video, continue my journey with me is what I want to say. Next video, I'm going to show my new antenna setup and how well that does as opposed to what I already have here. So, guys, thanks again. And this is just opens up, like I said, a whole new can of worms. And I'm looking forward to sharing my experiences with you. And maybe next time on the air, we'll do some CQ on the HF, and that's also going to be dependent on whether or not this radio decides to trip my microphone. I don't think it will, though. I think it's just the radio I used the last time that did that was putting out spurious emissions. 7-3, everybody. KC3QPJ, wishing you a belated happy Thanksgiving, and I will say Merry Christmas for those that still like to call it Christmas, and happy holidays for those that are politically correct. Don't want to offend anybody. Come on back for the next one. 7-3, KC3, QPJ, and I'll be clear. You guys have a good one.